So good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Anamkara Thursday night meditation program. And with all my heart and with all my love, I welcome you to our program tonight. Thank you for coming and bringing the truth of who you are. You are the divine. You are the embodiment of the divine. You are an emanation of the divine. There's literally nothing about you that isn't that sublime power of consciousness, Shakti, makes everything about who you are the divine. And so this program, satsang on Thursday night, keeping the company of the truth, it means keeping the company of the truth of knowing who we are. That's why we gather. So to become immersed in that. And tonight is a first Thursday of the month, so we get into talking about practices and dharma. But I want to start with this. See, this is it, my friend. This day is it. This day is the unfolding of the glory of God. This is it, my friend. This hour is it. This hour is the unfolding of the glory of God. This is it, my friend. This moment is it. This moment is the unfolding of the glory of God. This is it, my friend. This breath is it. This breath is the unfolding of the glory of God. This is it, my friend. This creation is it. This creation is the unfolding of the glory of God. To know that, we practice. And tonight we're going to be focusing on some of the foundational practices that helps quiet the mind and separate our consciousness from being so closely identified with thoughts, feelings, actions, this and that, all the things that then cloud our vision so we don't get to have that experience. Now that poem arose, and you might think, oh, it was, in meditation, a nice quiet place, something like that. No, that poem arrived while I was sitting on a dingy road in Cincinnati and it stopped in jammed rush hour traffic trying to get to my job at Cincinnati Children's Hospital. And just as goes on all the time now, mantra was just resounding within. And then suddenly that appeared. So the power of the practices is that it opens us up to that kind of experience anytime, any place, all times, all places. So we're going to start with the opening mantras as a way to take refuge in the power of the infinite that is a throb of sound. That's what mantra is. So that we can step back from the mind and come home to the truth of who we are. So we'll start with the opening mantras. Shri Mata Kalim Devi Ki Jai Gajananam Bhutta Ganari Sevitam Kapita Jambu Palacharu Bhakshanam Umasudham Shoka Vinashakarakam Namami Vigneshwara Parapankajam Shri Ganeshaya Namaha Shri Ganeshaya Namaha Shri Ganeshaya Namaha Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamandaya Purnamevavashishate Om Shanti 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 Shri Mata Kali Mahadevi Ki Jai. So once again, with all my heart, with all my love, I welcome you to our program tonight. It's in that stillness, in that silence, that we begin to know the truth of who we are and what all beings are. That living presence of the divine, all of creation. That's what we practice. The practices are aimed at transforming the mind. The living presence, that's already here in all its fullness, in all its glory. So we do the practices in order to really become immersed in the direct knowledge of that. And one of the foundational practices that we're going to talk about tonight is mantra, what we were just doing, because mantra is a vehicle for the infinite. The great poet saint from the 15th century, Kabir, said, "If you want to know the truth, I'll tell you the truth. Listen to the secret sound, the real sound which is inside you. The one no one talks of speaks the secret sound to himself, and he is the one who has made it all." That secret sound that Kabir was talking about was mantra. And he desperately wanted that from his guru. And because he wasn't, at that time, there was such a class divide in India at that time, and he wasn't of the class, the Brahmins, that could get initiated. He had to go through tremendous amount of effort in order to get this supreme master, Ramananda, a great Siddha master, to initiate him. And then he gave the mantra to everyone as a vehicle to come home to their self, to know that themselves. Well, that inner sound, we also call it nada. And that inner sound that is also referred to as an unstruck sound. So in the tradition of mantra yoga, in the tradition of Kundalini, traditional Kundalini yoga, when we're looking at the different centers of consciousness, the heart center is known as the Anahata chakra. Anahata means unstruck sound. And what the yogis recognized was that in deeper states of meditation, various sounds could be heard, including that was where the sounds of mantra first arose. That's where the sounds that make up Om, that are constantly reverberating within us. But the mind has to become subtle enough, refined enough, to be able to enter that state where we can hear that in its fullness. And there are other classic forms of nada, this sound. There can be the sound of thunder. There can be the sound that sounds like the humming of bees, or the roar of the waves of the ocean. These can just arise spontaneously. And again, these were recognized as how the infinite is taking form. And so that for instance, with the awakening of Kundalini Shakti, this innate power of consciousness, to know the infinite as ourself, it can draw us spontaneously into those states. We don't have to seek it. We don't have to do anything. Leave the ego doing mind behind and let the power of Shakti, the power of Kundalini, with its infinite intelligence, draw us into the experiences we need to have as we have them. But in that spontaneous unfolding of yoga that happens with Kundalini, then these classic forms of yoga, mantra yoga, laya yoga, raja yoga, hatha yoga, various spontaneous movements on all the different domains of consciousness can happen. And then we get to have the direct experience of that yoga, that deep, sublime yoga, being carried forward by this innate power of consciousness, just unfolding as our experience. Laya yoga is another form of yoga that focuses on, just as there's inner sounds that arise, there are inner lights that can happen. So we can have various things happen sort of in the visual field. And it's a very subtle form, again, of the infinite starting to take form before it gets so concrete that it becomes a noticeable form, before it becomes something as concrete as even thought or speech speech or language. So all these things are unfolding spontaneously on these subtle levels. And it's the power of mantra, which is a throb of the infinite, that takes the form of mantra and is a way that then we can perceive it. Our mind is form. Remember we were talking about that last week as we were talking about the Heart Sutra and how it's about relinquishing all forms, getting free of all forms. But the infinite has to reach into the domain of form to give us a vehicle to go back. Mantra is that kind of vehicle. It's the infinite appearing in the domain of the finite in order to give us a place to then take refuge, to become merged with that, and then become merged with the infinite. And so mantra is seen as fundamental to the practice of yoga, especially in this age. It's also critical for the practice of Vajrayana Buddhism, and we see the use of sacred sound in many different spiritual traditions. In an ancient Kashmir Shaivite text, it says, "Within is the unstruck inner sound, heard by the subtle ear, resounding continually, and rushing forward like a river. Steeped in the absolute, the creator, in the form of sound, one attains the supreme Brahman, the absolute." So it's again just pointing out this vehicle of sound, which is a vehicle of Shakti, is a vehicle of pure power of consciousness. You know, one of the things we always encounter in sadhana and spiritual practice, and this is true across traditions, the ordinary mind makes things ordinary. And so it hears sounds. Oh, it's just a sound. You hear sounds all day. Here's even something like a mantra. It goes, oh yeah, mantras, I've heard of mantras, you know. Even the word mantra gets used in everything from, you know, news stories and everything else incorrectly, but we become numb to the depth of what mantra truly is. Mantra is a throb of the infinite. Mantra is a throb of your own self. There's a whole Upanishad just on the mantra Om. Awakens, said to make up the three sounds of the mantra Om. The fourth sound is not sound at all. It's stillness. It's the bindu. It's the portal into the infinite. So the sounds arise out of that stillness, out of that absolute quiet, and dissolve back into that. So if we merge in the mantra, we'll dissolve back into the infinite source with that. That's what mantra is, an invitation, moment by moment, to engage us, to dissolve all into silence, into the stillness, into the infinite. And that's why we use, especially mantras like Soham, or the Hamsa mantra. Simply means, I am that. But that is the divine, the infinite. The same as we see in the Old Testament when Moses asked God who he is in the burning bush. And God replies, I am that I am. I am. That pure I am awareness. It's also known as Purnaham Vimarsha, pure I am consciousness. That's the essence of whether it's Om Namah Shivaya, Hamsa, Om Kalima, Om Tere Tu Tere Tore Soha, Om Taritam Soha. These mantras, they all arise out of that infinite spaciousness. And as we enter them, they'll bring us back to that. And so, as a foundational practice, it's particularly important. And it's accessible at all times and all places. In this age that we call Kali Yuga, the dark age, the age where dharma and really dedication to practice is at its lowest ebb. It's as if the infinite said, okay, we're going to make it really easy. We're going to give you a vehicle that you can access anytime, any place. Anytime, any place. And we're going to make it even easier, says God. We're going to actually say it for you with every breath. Because the breath comes in with the sound hum and goes out with the sound sa. In with the sound hum and out with the sound sa. All day, all night, throughout the entire existence of this body, the infinite is infusing it with that foundational awareness. I am that. I am that. I am that. Every breath proclaiming, I am that. Every breath proclaiming that our life itself, life breath, rests in that Shakti, that throb of the infinite. I am that. That's what we're coming home to. So that's what we take refuge in. And it's really in that sense that mantra, the word itself, means that which protects. When we take refuge in mantra, meaning when we become absorbed in mantra, we're protecting our consciousness from becoming identified with limitations. Those identifications are what bind us. The moment we say something other than I am that, meaning infinite, oh, I am a man, I am a woman, I'm happy, I'm sad, I got to do this, I got to do that, I'm the doer, all those things that come after I am instantly bind our consciousness. We instantly have the experience of what it is to enter the reality created by that thought. The underlying power of thought to create reality is also mantra in a limited form. So that's why it's called the Matrika Shaktis, the little mothers that give birth to reality moment by moment as our thoughts. So we perceive something, we have a thought about it, we become the thought, we become the identity associated with the thought. And now we're in that reality. To have a choice about that is really what sadhana is, so that we can have the experience of the infinitude of being, even while being aware of what the nature of mind is, what the nature of the body is, what the nature of these roles and things that we took on in this life, so that they don't just disappear, but we're not bound by them. That's the gift, again, of mantra, of the power of mantra, of the Shakti, the power of consciousness that takes the form of mantra. And as we become more and more absorbed in that, then we can get further and further away from that bondage to the mind. The mind doesn't have to disappear. We don't have to erase the mind. You don't have to knock yourself in the head and go unconscious. We just have to become so detached that the mind itself is just one throb of the infinite in the infinite spaciousness of being. So when our awareness expands, truly expands to the fullness of what it is, the boundlessness of that. What we talked about last week that Buddha spoke of in terms of the four immeasurables, that was an attempt to put into words the boundless qualities of the boundless joy, the boundless wisdom, right? The boundless compassion and the boundless equanimity that is that state of consciousness that also holds the poor mind. It can hold the mind. The mind can't hold it. So part of what the mind has to do is surrender that effort so we can directly know and not through the filter of the limiting mind. So right now, if you close your eyes, right, and just allow yourself to begin just feeling, don't do anything, just notice the breath coming in and going out. And then, as you're noticing that, begin to imagine that sound, hearing the sound, the hum as the breath comes in, the sa as the breath goes out, the hum as the breath comes in, the sa as the breath goes out. Just staying with that, the awareness, now just of that imagined sense of the sound, that quiet sound, that faint sound of hum as the breath comes in, and sa as the breath goes out. Now you may also be aware of awareness itself. The awareness itself is what's illuminating that thought, that sound of hum and sa. That awareness is the awareness of I am all. I am that. Without thought, the awareness doesn't have to have thought. The awareness is pure awareness of that. That I am. From that place, we start to see there's a stillness. There's a stillness between the breaths. The exhalation goes out and becomes still for just a moment before it turns and comes back in. The breath comes in and becomes still for an instant before it goes out. Every breath arises out of stillness, dissolves into stillness. So you can watch that. Watch your breath. Watch for that place of stillness, that just moment of stillness between the inhalations and the exhalations. There may be times where that stillness starts to expand, where the breath begins to slow and even stop. Just rest in that stillness. If thoughts arise, that's fine. Watch the thoughts. The thoughts arise out of stillness, dissolve into stillness. There's a place of stillness between the thoughts. Just notice that. You're noticing the stillness. Even if the mind is producing thought after thought after thought, what's the space within which they arise and dissolve? That space is stillness. Unmoved by movements of the mind, unmoved by movements of the body, the spaciousness of stillness that resounds with the awareness, I am that. I am all. It's the awareness of Shivoham, I am the auspicious one. It's the awareness of I am the infinite. That's what we're invited into over and over. When we dissolve the mind in meditation, by dissolving it into mantra, the mantra dissolves the mind in its source. Stillness. Absolute stillness. So we enter that stillness and explore the spaciousness of being that is that stillness. In that stillness, we can see the mind in the same way that Buddha described it in the Heart Sutra. Just seeing those skandhas, those aggregates come and go, so ephemeral, so empty. Empty of self. They're just a throb, just a pulsation, another transformation of energy, the energy of the infinite playing at taking on forms that are ephemeral. They'll all dissolve. That's their nature. You just watch. You become the seer who's never seen, the witness of it all. And as you watch, you may notice there are particular kinds of thoughts or things that arise in that space that pulls you out of the stillness. You can see, oh, I've become that. Let me just let it go. Come back to the spaciousness, to the stillness. Come back to mantra. Replace the thought with that inner sound of the hum and the sa, or the om namah shivaya, or the om kalima. A safe refuge for the mind. Because that throb of the infinite that is the mantra will unerringly take you back to its source. If you just stay with it. Stay in the vehicle, and you'll go where the vehicle goes. This is the sublime nature of mantra. The great Sufi poet saint, Rumi, wrote about the divine word mantra. He said, that which God said to the rose and caused it to laugh in full-blown beauty, he said to my heart and made it 100-fold more beautiful. That is the sound of the divine. That is the sound of the infinite taking the form of mantra, transforming our vision so we see the beauty of the divine unfolding everywhere, within and without, and even the boundary between within and without dissolves. And one of the ways that helps our poor mind to fully engage is to also invoke our capacity for love, the love for the infinite, the love for the divine, whatever that form might be. Because it's also a throb. Love is a throb of the infinite. So when we practice with love for God, love for the divine, love for the infinite, love for the mantra that took form just to draw us in as a vehicle of grace, reaching out to us so that we engage it. It gathers even more of our energy to dissolve into that, into the self, into the one. It's what helps cultivate our enthusiasm for practice. So to practice mantra throughout the day, right? So that we're taking refuge in it, not just when we sit for meditation. That's a great, of course, time to start and dissolve into the stillness. But what's the mind doing all day long? Well, it's going all kinds of places. And that's what we want to bring it back from. Well, mantra serves that purpose. Right? So by taking refuge in mantra throughout the day, we keep the mind gathered in the highest. We can't necessarily be sitting, of course, for meditation and dissolving into that. We have our dharma for our loved ones, our community, the things that we engage in. But while we're doing that, we can keep the mantra going. Because you start to see so much of what the mind is doing is just garbage thinking. Right? But it's dragging our consciousness into that. It's putting our body through it. We can see that, what seems to be a nothing thought provokes the body and the mind. Right? It can compromise our immune system. It can do what we call amygdala hijack. It can get the fight, flight, freeze response going. So mantra, that which protects, keep refuge in the mantra. Keep coming back to it all day long. So it's one of the foundational practices for all throughout the day and in meditation. Mantra, taking refuge in mantra. When you first awake in the morning, train the mind. The first thing, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Kalima, Hamsa. Go right into mantra. Enter your day from the highest. Carry it and let it carry you throughout the day. Let the last thought in your mind before you dive into the unconsciousness of sleep, let it be Om Namah Shivaya, Hamsa, or Om Kalima. So the day is filled. And there'll be times after, you really get into the practice of repeating mantra, if you wake in the middle of the night, you'll hear it going. You awake in the night and you hear Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. Holding you in the divine embrace, moment by moment. So that's what mantra is. It's a throb of that love, a throb of the love of the infinite for the finite. It's a throb of the love of the infinite for the finite as its own self. That it reaches out and says, here, now come back again to know the fullness of who we really are in all that. Then we are also then mixing that love into what we're doing throughout the day. Mother Teresa said, every act of love is a work of peace, no matter how small. So think about it. As we bring love into action throughout the day by adding mantra to all that we're doing, we're also bringing that boundless quality of equanimity, of peace into the world. We're helping to free the mind from its reactivity. So we bring peace into our own being, into our own lives and relationships and work. All through this simple thing of mantra. That's why we have to overcome the ordinary mind that diminishes, in its view, what that potency, that power, that sublime vibration of what mantra is. So we have to keep reminding it. No, mantra is no ordinary sound, not ordinary words. This is a throb of the infinite. So when we say it, we also are cultivating that kind of reverence, that kind of devotion, that kind of subtlety of mind that can recognize the infinite, the divine, in sound form. So that then we can fully understand it, experience it, know it, unfold that. So entering through the power of mantra, entering into meditation, that's why it's such a foundational practice. And then in meditation, what we're doing is then becoming more and more absorbed, so that in the practice of meditation, when we've set aside a time where our dharma isn't calling us into action, we can just dissolve into that. And then just experience what the gifts of mantra are. I remember one time I was running a program up at the ashram in South Folesburg, and it was a weekend retreat, much of it based on mantra. And at the end of the Friday night component of the retreat, I was going to bed, and it was late in the night, and the retreat was going to start at 5 in the morning on Saturday morning, which meant I needed to be to the hall to help set things up. There were 1,200 people in the retreat, and so I needed to be there early, so I was going to have to get up at 3, and I remember laying down and going to, trying to get to sleep. And the room seemed so bright. And I thought, oh no, I have one of these rooms near the parking lot where they have those big halogen, parking lot lights on or something. And I'm laying there and I'm just doing the mantra, and I'm thinking, I'll slide into sleep eventually. And the light is just so filling my vision. And I thought, wow, what could that be? Maybe I should go look out the window. So I opened my eyes. It was pitch dark. The room was black. I closed my eyes. Nothing but light. This field of blue light. That was the light of mantra. So mantra, as it becomes subtler and subtler in meditation, can open up the doors to those divine sounds, nada, and the lights that are the foundation of Laya Yoga spontaneously happens. And so there's just this field of light. And the next thing I knew, I just became the light. All sense of me dissolved into that field of light. Fortunately, some hours later, it also woke me up so I could get out and do my seva and fulfill my dharma. But this is the power of mantra. This is the power of practices when we get fully absorbed in them. So that's why, the foundation of these practices is mantra, meditation, that we do not only daily, mantra we do continuously. Because the truth is, and we know this from neurophysiology, in terms of how the mind and brain works, we're either practicing going where we want to go, or we're actually practicing going some other direction. Ordinary thinking is dragging us off in the wrong direction. Mantra is grounding us in the truth of who we are. So moment by moment, we have to choose, where do we want our consciousness to rest? In the truth and the fullness of who we are, what the divine is? Or do we want to get caught up in the mind? Now, sometimes the mind needs to be active because that's its job. That's its dharma. We still want to rest in that spaciousness of being, of awareness, watching the mind fulfill its dharma, take care of its tasks, its work, its engagement in the day. But now it's not holding all of who we are. It's just the mind, and the truth of who we are is watching it, undisturbed, just delighting in the play of Shakti, the play that is that power of consciousness taking the form of mind and body, actions. And we're in that sublime witness, Shiva consciousness, the auspicious one, the absolute, the ground of our being. So mantra and meditation are key practices. Mantra as much as possible. Meditation, 45 minutes to an hour a day is an optimal amount of time. Any amount of time, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute is good. So meditate as much as one can, but you don't have to go beyond an hour in a day. But that being able to really stabilize our consciousness, and I've seen this in countless times I've worked with people doing EEG work in meditation. The mind and brain kind of drop down in levels over time. So where you get to in 5 minutes isn't where you're going to be in 10 or 20 or 30 or 45. So if you really want to sink into the profound depths of meditation, give yourself enough time. Give yourself enough time. And then give yourself time to just sit and revel in that. Because over time you can drop faster. Then you get to just rest in the ocean of being, the ocean of consciousness. That's your true home. So mantra and meditation, key practices, foundational practices. The other foundational practice is seva, selfless service. And that's a practice of attitude. How do we engage our everyday life as an offering, as a way of serving others? So that we spend as much time serving and offering to others to help relieve suffering, to give the gifts of whatever we have to the world in that selfless way. These three practices, mantra, meditation, seva, they're vehicles for bringing us into ourself. But then, when we're resting in ourself, they're expressions of that state. Resting in your highest nature. Awareness is filled, the throb of mantra, from its grossest form of sound and speech to its subtlest form of pure awareness. All mantra. That's all mantra. From form to formless, from formless to form, mantra. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Kalima, Om Kalima, Hamsa, Hamsa. All of that. Meditation is the living state of that knowing, unbroken. Not like the states of waking consciousness and dream consciousness and deep sleep. These are discontinuous. Meditation transcends and subsumes them all. Meditation is fully present here and now. It's unbreakable. So the practices we do intermittently because that's the nature of mind, but the state, unbroken, unbreakable. Not mind-born, not ephemeral. The very state of the truth of who you are. So meditation is profound letting go. The process of meditation is profound letting go. What are we letting go of? Identification with the mind and the body. That's all. It's our identification with them that seems to occlude the self, the boundless light, effulgence of the divine within ourselves and everywhere. Let go and let go and let go. Let go in meditation. Let go. Let go into mantra until it's going continuously. And then mantra will begin to even shed its form. So it's just like there's a throb of awareness. It doesn't even have a sound to it. It's become so subtle. To make an effort would drag you out of that state. Because now you're in effortless meditation. Now you're in that embrace. Now grace is holding you and drawing you in to dissolve all sense of limited self. To come to rest in what's beyond the mind, but fills the heart. It's radiance. That's why we do these practices. That's true satsang. That's keeping the company of the truth of who you are. So now we're going to be chanting the great mantra, the Maha Mantra, the Shakti Mantra of Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. It means I bow to the infinite, I bow to the divine, I bow to the self. So we're going to be chanting for a few minutes and then just rest in the stillness of that awareness. If the mind moves, let it move with that mantra. And when it becomes still, let it revel in the infinitude of that spaciousness. Pure being, untouched by movements of the mind, untouched by movements of the body, untouched by anything. That's the truth of who you are. And now we'll chant Om Namah Shivaya. Shrimati Kali Devi Ki Jai. Om Namah Shivaya. Mahadevi ki jai. So we end with this prayer, and may all our practices truly benefit everyone, and may all beings know complete freedom from suffering. And namaste. Some mantra and meditation, seva, practices that carry us to the highest goal of human life, to know and to serve, to know the divine as ourself in all it is, and to serve moment by moment with love. That space of knowing is the space of knowing as God knows. And for the infinite, for the divine, knowing and loving are one. It knows all, loves all, holds all in divine embrace. Come to know yourself as that. And then everything about your life becomes service. Everything becomes an encounter with the divine. That's all there is. There is no other. There's only the one. Until we know that, we do practices. We can practice nonviolence, practice contentment, practice peace, practice absorption. When we rest in that knowing, then we are spontaneously, naturally free of the impulses that would drive us into those other states. All we see is the self. Our only way of relating to that is with love, compassion, patience, kindness, equanimity. This is the truth of who you are. I want to thank you for bringing the fullness of who you are to this evening, bringing your commitment to practices, to knowing this, and then walking it into the world. This is an age where we have to stand for the truth. We have to stand for dharma and walk it into the world with love, compassion, with enthusiasm. The great Western mystic, Ralph Waldo Emerson, said, any great undertaking requires enthusiasm. Enthusiasm means to be filled with spirit. The great poet saint Kabir Maharaj said, on the path to God, it's longing that does all the work. And then he said, look at me, I'm a slave of that longing. That longing, enthusiasm to know, to serve, to live that into our lives, to live that reality moment by moment. Nothing more sublime, nothing more ecstatic. That's why as the yogis and Buddhas and mystics of all traditions talk about this rapturous awareness. It's rapturous, it's ecstatic, it's beyond expression in words. We come home to that. So keep doing the practices and living them into the world and into your everyday life. And thank you for coming with all my heart, with all my love. I look forward to seeing you again next week.